Thank you, Mark. Good evening to all. Again, I'm Rob Phillips, Director of Planning and Community Development. I'll start off with the agenda for this. Let me share my screen first. Okay. So I'll go through the agenda for this presentation this evening. We're going to start off with open space strategy and a parcel history. We're going to move to planning and zoning. We're going to move then to educational impact. Then we're going to look at the financial assessment and infrastructure impact, and then community impact. To start us off, I'll turn it over to Paul Chaplinsky, the chair of the Open Space and Land Acquisition Committee. Paul?
Thanks, Rob, and thank you to the town manager and also Madam Chair for giving me a few minutes to speak here. I'm going to go through three slides here to talk a little bit about the Open Space Subcommittee and talk a little bit about how the Open Space Subcommittee follows the Plan of Conservation and Development and identifies and vets opportunities for the community. Each time we get an opportunity, we look at primarily these 6 strategy elements that are outlined in our Plan of Conservation and Development, and we balance whether this particular parcel meets these criteria or not. And so you see, I've put in here the check marks. For example, the first one in the upper left-hand corner. This property meets the standard of public drinking water or water supply and watershed, as it has an aquifer protection zone over most of the parcel. It also has surface water that we want to protect in the form of streams and ponds. It's a critical wildlife habitat. If you've visited this area of town, or if you've had the pleasure of playing golf there, or visiting the restaurant or the venue there, you've probably seen many different animals in the area on the course that people have enjoyed. These animals use this as a space to not only live, but also pass through. And not having something like a development there helps provide this opportunity for these animals. Of course, with an active recreation, a golf course, the parcel does have recreational opportunities. And you know, the parcel does have some rich history in town, which I'm going to touch on the next slide, as a farmstead back in the early 1900s and in the 1800s. And then finally, Rob's going to talk a little bit later. You know, we're used to seeing, when you talk about open space, if you will, people oftentimes think of you know, passive or hiking, but it's also important strategies to have development rights for what's called perceived open spaces. Large open spaces that a community benefits from by not having significant developments, but also can be a use of the community. Next slide, please, Rob. Okay. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the history of this parcel. I'd mentioned that it was a farm. The Horace Webster farmhouse, which still exists today on South End Road, adjacent to the golf course, was part of the entire farm. So that was the farmstead. The Webster family not only owned this building, there was another building close by which was demolished on the same parcel, but also the entire golf course was farmland. In the early 1900s and in 1922, there was an agreement to create a lease. The Webster family, in conjunction with maybe a half a dozen others, formed a committee to bring a golf course, at first a 9-hole golf course, onto this parcel. And they leased the land and they put this first Fieldstone clubhouse, which still houses the primary clubhouse and the restaurant that we know today on site. Today, Southington Country Club is one of 2 golf courses that we have the opportunity to enjoy here in town, whether it's you know, on this side of town or the other side of town. And we recognize that this golf course is more than just you know, active recreation or playing a sport. There's people who come out and they meet there for meetings. There's people who meet friends there. They meet strangers and they play. There are people who walk up and play with other people that they don't know, just to have an opportunity to play and meet folks. There are people who recreate and come for gatherings such as charity events and weddings, and then regular dinners and lunches, you know, at some regular frequency. So places like these they become a center, a focal point in your community. And there's not, as you mentioned, Madam Chair, there's not often opportunities where you have large tracts of land like this that are approved for large developments over 100 houses, where a town or a community has an opportunity to engage with the owners, have a great discussion about how to preserve it, and actually have the opportunity to preserve it. And so if you go to the next slide, I'm going to leave you with just a couple quotes. I mentioned that we don't often get opportunities like these. And so, as I was reflecting on what it is that, this parcel and this business brings to our community, I think of, how it boils down. Ben Hogan said in 1985, I found the game to be in all factualness, a universal traveled at home or abroad. And golf is labeled as one of the handful of life sports that people can play throughout their entire life, if they are so fortunate to have the opportunity. And they don't do it for just the sport. They do it because it's a friendship game, it's community building, and it's so much more when it comes to collaboration and being part of our community. And I will leave you with this before I turn it over to the professionals who are going to follow me. Mahatma Gandhi said, "The future depends on what you do today." And as I mentioned, Madam Clerk, we don't often get the chance to have opportunities like this, and I think we need to seize the moment. I am fully supportive of the plan that's here in place, and I'm very excited to move forward with this.
All right, thank you, Paul. Moving on to the planning and zoning section. This section will start off with the town attorney, Jeremy Taylor, and conclude with some comments from me. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Jeremy.
Thank you, Rob. Tonight I'm going to be talking about what does it mean to purchase development rights, along with why would a municipality purchase development rights in the first place, and then talk about the valuation of purchasing development rights. So what does it mean for the town to purchase development rights? Well, the purchase of development rights programs are one viable approach that state and local governments have to preserve farmland and open space. Purchasing development rights provides a way to financially compensate a willing landowner for not developing their land. When a town purchases development rights, the town obtains a grant of restriction and development rights, which permanently restricts the development on the land. However, the landowner does remain owner of the land and may use it or resell it for whatever restricted use that are on the grant. Now we go on to why would a municipality, a town like town of Southington, purchase development rights? Well, PDR programs are a means to manage growth and provide the benefits of open space without the expense of a town having to purchase, maintain, and police these if the town were to buy them on their own. So PDR programs create the ability for a local government to limit or prevent development of land in accord with the community growth management and the town's land protection goals. Now we move on to how do we value the purchase of development rights? Well, the valuation is done by an appraisal. The value of the development rights usually is the difference between the fair market value of the best and biggest use for the property, which on this piece of land would be the subdivision development, which is already approved by the town. So it's the value between that and then the value of the land when the restricted use is put on there. The town hired an appraisal to do the appraisal of the purchase of development rights, and the appraiser came in at $4,700,000. In saying this, we are very grateful to the owners of the Southington Country Club because we were able to work with them and they worked with us to negotiate the purchase of the development rights down to the number of $4.5 million, which is $200,000 less than what the town appraisal came in at. So that is a big, significant number for them to agree to go down on the number with us to make sure that it's a good value for the town. And that's my presentation today. I will hand it back to Rob. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy. As with most things we do here in the planning department, we always look to our plan of conservation and development. That plan was updated in 2016. And in the early stages of that update, we had early public outreach meetings. And We had a number of issues that came forward through those public outreach meetings, and participants judged the town open space as one of the top town attributes. In fact, they did rank priorities in that meeting, and open space was ranked as the highest priority goal over natural resource protection, traffic and circulation improvements, and other community facilities and infrastructure. And then diving deeper into the plan of conservation and development, some of the policies that were developed as part of the POCD review indicated, and it's on page 30 if you're looking at the plan. Number one, be proactive in preserving open space. Preserve as much open space as possible, especially as protected or dedicated open space. And I will talk briefly about those types of definitions on the next slide. And as opportunities arise, convert managed and perceived open space into dedicated, protected open space. Now, of the policies in the plan of conservation and development, we also have tools that help us achieve those goals. And one of the tools on page 31 is the purchase of development rights for preservation of open space, farmland, and other purposes. Now, touching on the definitions in the plan, protected open space is open space that is protected by deed restriction, easement, or other encumbrance. A good example of that would be Hawks Landing Country Club. Dedicated open space is land owned by a public or nonprofit entity, which is expected to remain as open space in perpetuity. A good example of that is the Southington Land Trust that owns some properties in town. Managed open space is land owned and used for another purpose, which could include golf courses, as we're discussing this evening. And then perceived open space is private land, which is presently vacant or partially developed, but which has no protections at all from being developed. Properties in the Public Act 490 program, farmland, or in this case, the Southington Country Club are examples of perceived open space that folks may drive by and say that looks great, but unfortunately there's no protection from development. So the property in question that we're discussing this evening is located in this oval red circle. It's about 97 acres. And what you'll see here adjacent to that in purple is an example of a recently protected or dedicated open space, the Curtis Family Open Space property. And then you'll see in the green shaded areas are open spaces that were acquired by other means, typically from subdivision, dedication, or they serve another purpose like Recreation Park over here just to the west of the subject property. Now, it was mentioned earlier that this property has been approved for a subdivision. Here's the approved plan. It shows 114 lots, R2025. They're about around a half-acre lot, half-acre size lot. Obviously, an extensive road network is proposed here as well. And again, it's important to note that this can be constructed, commenced starting tomorrow, as early as tomorrow. So with that plan that's been approved, the development of that plan would disturb 2 acres of wetlands and water within upland review area. It would disturb, or it would add 2 acres of stormwater detention basins, discharging to wetlands, 3 total basins. It would create a stream crossing from a roadway crossing, which would impact obviously further wetlands. A state-defined aquifer protection area is located on this property, and it's notable that Southington Well Number 2 is also nearby. It would disturb 9 acres of tree and shrub habitat. And the property is also listed under the Natural Diversity Database, which is state and federal listed species of concern. I'll touch a little bit more on that in the next slide. Preservation of this property would provide 77 additional acres of protected open space. The proposed 20 acres of open space on the development option are actually a majority of wetlands, so that really lends just to the use of passive recreation uses. Development rights of this property adds approximately 14% additional acreage to the 700 acres of previously purchased town space. That's both fee simple and purchase of development rights thus far in the town, and that's a substantial amount. Again, the Natural Diversity Database is a listing of data from the state of Connecticut that actually indicates areas where there's state and federal listed species that have been found or critical habitat that may support those species. You'll see down in the oval red circle oval again, you'll see that an area of concern is located on the western portion of the site. And again, the state will not divulge what species or habitat for those species is present for obvious reasons for protection, but it is notable that that a portion of this property lies within that area, and it's important to protect those resources. Now I'll pivot over to the educational impact a little bit. So there's sorry, page back here. So there's data out there that Rutgers University has produced, and basically what they've done is they've tried to account for the number of school-aged children that reside in new single-family home developments. Or actually, it's a bunch of data, but in this case, it would be single-family home developments. And these they're called residential multipliers. These are here to try to estimate the impact of the number of public school-aged children that might be produced by these developments. In our case here, we're looking at an average of 4 bedrooms per home. Some will be 3, some will be 5, but on average, it would work out to be 4 bedrooms. Obviously, with proposed 114 single-family home lots and the residential multiplier, calculate together should yield an expected, and it could be higher, it could be lower, but an expected 108 public school-aged children would be produced from this proposed development. Now, taking the 2019-2020 net current expenditures per pupil, that's literally the amount of money that the local tax base has to spend educating each child in the public school system, of $12,250 times the 108 estimated public school children. We can estimate that the annual education cost for this potential development would be about $1.3 million annually in perpetuity. Obviously, that's a number that keeps happening every year, and in fact could grow. I also want to mention that the American Farmland Trust has accumulated data from all over the country, which shows that the cost of community services from residential land uses exceeds every tax dollar generated and is substantially higher than other land uses such as business and agriculture. So in other words, for every dollar that's raised in tax revenue, residential costs $1.16. Obviously, the other land uses, business, agriculture, are far less than that, and that is certainly something to take note of. All right, and pivoting over to financial assessment, the next discussion will be about tax revenues of the current use and the potential subdivision. And with that, I'll turn it over to Teresa Babin, Director of Assessment and Revenue. Teresa?
Thank you, Rob. Good evening, everyone. So the first slide here is just going to start off by listing the current assessments from the golf course as it sits now. The real estate is actually comprised of 2 parcels, and the personal property assessment is the total of all personal property assets at that location. And that would include everything from the kitchen equipment, the tables, chairs, and other furniture and fixtures in the restaurant, down to the other equipment and golf carts used on the course itself. You'll see that when we apply this year's mill rate to the total current assessment of over $2.5 million, we'll get a total current tax revenue from the location of just over $79,000. And to calculate a potential revenue amount from the proposed subdivision, quite a few assumptions had to be made. While Southington does have many beautiful subdivisions to speak of, we've chosen the Woodland Heights subdivision off of Loper Street for a couple of reasons. It's a new development, and it's also an active development in that it's still being built out. So it's believed that the comparables that we are using are very legitimate. The average home in that development is a 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath structure, averaging 2,300 square feet. And it's important to note that we're not using any additional outbuilding assessment in our calculations. We're not including any sheds, additional garages, or in-ground pool areas. So the only non-living spaces we are using are the decks, patios, and porches that are attached to the homes. Therefore, our average assessment per unit at $297,500 translates into a full value of $425,000. We also had to assume a motor vehicle component of tax revenue. And for that, we've assumed each unit being a two-vehicle household carrying an additional $29,400 in motor vehicle assessment. So on the next slide, to calculate the potential revenue, we see a subdivision such as the one already approved bringing in. We're going to take the total real estate assessment of $297,500, add that to the total motor vehicle assessment of $29,400, and multiply that by the most recent mill rate we have of 30.63 to get a total tax revenue per unit of $10,012. And the calculations further show that that would result in a total tax revenue of $1.141 million for the approved 114 house subdivision.
All right, thanks, Teresa. We'll do a quick pivot to the bond costs of the proposed PDR, and that will be covered by Amelia Portolino, Director of Finance. Amelia?
Thank you, Rob. Next slide. Okay, we are proposing bonding the $4.5 million to purchase the for the acquisition of the development rights. If we do bond it, we're estimating that we can bond the $4.5 million over 20 years at 2.5%, which is a conservative estimate given that we just sold $15.5 million of bonds last week for 1.44%. But when you look at the chart and the estimate that I've come up with, that equates to an average annual bonding cost of $284,000 over a 20-year period. After the 20 years are over, we're done paying for it. Are there any questions? As you can see, the mill rate effect, the first year would be 0.08 mils, decrementing to 0.06 in the by the 20th year, and then obviously after that we wouldn't be paying it any further. All right.
Thanks, Amelia. I think we might want to hold questions to the very end.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to impacts to the town's infrastructure. That will be presented by Annette Turnquist, Director of Public Works and Town Engineer. Annette?
Thanks, Rob. Okay, so there are 208 miles of road in Southington, and each road requires snow plowing, leaf collection, drainage maintenance, and eventually rehabilitation and reconstruction. If the Southington Country Club property were to be developed as previously presented, it would add approximately 6,610 linear feet of road. That equates to $5,277 in annual costs for snow and ice removal. Over the 20 years, subject to 2% annual inflation, the total would be $128,224. Now for leaf collection, it would be $1,801 annually for a total of $43,770 over 20 years. Drainage maintenance occurs every 4 years, and the development as proposed would have 3 detention ponds and about 52 catch basins. In year 4, the drainage maintenance would cost $3,066. In year 8, it would be $3,254. This increases a few $100s each.
Annette, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Does anyone hear her?
For some reason, you just went quiet.
She
Yeah.
went, well, yeah.
No.
No? Okay, hang on. Let me see if I'm connected.
Okay.
I'll just give Annette a little time.
Rob, why don't we circle back? Go to the next slide and then circle back.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, we'll talk about the economic impacts to the community, and that will be covered by Lou Perillo, the Economic Development Director. Lou?
Thanks, Rob. The town's economic development supports buying the development rights for Southington Country Club. We recognize the value in this unique opportunity. As part of the town's economic development strategy, it's to expand upon our existing venues to further enhance Southington as a recreation destination. That's important because we could attract people from the region to come into Southington, and that helps support our local businesses. Golf courses provide quite a few opportunities. They provide great jobs, public outdoor sports entertainment, and charitable tournaments for fundraising that contributes to the social fabric of our community. Southington Country Club hosts about 40 tournaments a year, drawing over 3,000 participants, and the majority of the funds stay in our local community. The benefits of open space help balance growth in town. That balance is important because it can add value to the existing properties in town. It's our office's opinion that we don't need to destroy the golf course to build 114 houses. Houses can be built in other areas of town. However, the same can't be said for the golf course. Once this golf course is gone, it most likely will not be replaced. This statement is profound, but it's also evidenced with the fact that when the former Pine Valley Golf Course was sold, it was turned into a 95-house subdivision. The remaining portion was intended to remain a 9-hole course. That has not yet happened, probably because golf courses are not known to be very profitable, especially in the Northeast. Profit usually comes from the banquet and restaurant and dining areas and the cart revenues. That might help explain why Pine Valley's course has been left to be overgrown and not maintained. Our town has a rare opportunity to save one of our 2 remaining golf courses, or we can lose that course to build 114 homes. Like I said, once it's gone, it most likely will not be replaced. It's rare, my opening statement says we recognize the value, and that's because it's rare to get an opportunity to buy an approved subdivision. Usually, a developer would outbid the appraised value, preventing the town from the chance to even put in a bid or bring it to referendum. That actually happened on Loper Street and even the Pine Valley Golf Course. That's why this opportunity is so rare, and it's our hope that the town takes advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Annette, are you back?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I think I cut out somewhere in the drainage maintenance. Is that correct?
Somewhere after that or before road maintenance.
Okay. So as I mentioned, the drainage maintenance occurs every 4 years. This development would have 3 detention ponds and about 52 catch basins. In year 4, the drainage maintenance would cost $3,066. It would increase a few $100s every 4 years until reaching $4,127 in year 20. As for rehabilitation and reconstruction, in year 7, we would likely crack seal. Subject to 2% annual inflation, this would cost $9,925. In year 20, the roads would likely need to be milled and overlaid at a cost of $641,968. Adding all of these maintenance costs together over the 20 years yields $841,609. And taking a simple average results in $42,080 per year. Now, this presents a 20-year period, but it is important to note that these costs would continue forevermore and would continue to increase with each passing year. Rob?
All right, thank you, Annette. All right, so to summarize everything you've heard so far, the 2 options that we have before us right now, the subdivision option with a total tax revenue of $1.141 million, less the local education cost estimates, less the golf course revenue, and less the annualized maintenance costs that Annette just spoke of, would yield a approximately $300,000 deficit for the subdivision development. Obviously, over the 20+ years, this deficit grows. The preservation option, with the average annual bond costs of $284,000, would be relatively stable over the 20 years, and then 20 years that debt service ends, and then it would become a tax positive in perpetuity from that point forward. So taking both of those numbers and finding the difference between the two is about $19,000 in favor of the PDR. And again, these decisions are made now, and they have a real impact as time moves on. So to close on the criteria for open space acquisition in the 2015 Open Space Plan, which was part of the Plan of Conservation and Development, or at least absorbed into that. Some of those criteria are listed here. Is the property in a public drinking water supply watershed? Yes, we've already shown that. Does the land offer surface water protection, streams, river, pond, lake, wetlands, vernal pools, aquifer areas? Absolutely, we discussed that as well. Does the site contain critical wildlife habitat as identified in the state's natural diversity database? Absolutely. Does the site provide recreational or educational opportunities? All open space does, especially in this case if it is retained as a golf course. Does the site contain important cultural resources? Paul went through that, and certainly it looks as though it satisfies that criteria. Does the site provide strategic green space in highly developed areas? Obviously, this is one of the largest, if one of two, I believe, largest undeveloped residentially zoned properties in the town. So certainly not taking this opportunity right now means that it could potentially be lost forever, and you have less opportunities moving forward. So with that said, here's a timeline. I'm going to turn it back over to Mark Schota, the town manager, to discuss the timeline moving forward.
Thank you, Rob. And I want to take this moment to thank Rob and the entire staff. It's been a long time since I've seen such a thorough and well-designed briefing, and I'm very proud of all of you. Thank you very much. The timing aspect of if the council chooses to move forward, obviously we're sitting here on January 25th. This is the introduction. If the council wishes to move forward, there's votes it would take tonight to send it to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the 824 and to request that the Board of Finance conduct a public hearing, which could be scheduled for February 10th. That being said, the council would then schedule their own public hearing for February 22nd, and this presentation or a shorter version of it will be given at that time. This presentation would be given to the Board of Finance, and Rob and his staff would give us a shorter presentation to the Planning and Zoning Commission. If all goes according to what's written here and the council chooses to move forward, our recommendation would be is that we go to the public on Tuesday, May 4th for a referendum. I hope that the council gives my staff and I the opportunity to move forward with this. We believe that we have very good reasons and arguments to present to the public on why this is a unique opportunity and why we're all very excited to move forward with this. Madam Chair, thank you very much, and my staff and I are here to answer any questions you have.